Yes. Hello. Here I am. I'm trying to perfect these intros, but sometimes the first take is always the best one. I can tell you that for sure. For me, welcome, though, everyone, to my weekly podcast, The House List. This is a very special episode for a couple of reasons. One, my guest is an old friend of mine. I don't get to see or talk to her very often, so it was really special and cool to catch up. Her name's Angel Deradoorian, and this also marks the 20th episode of The House List. So thank you if you've been tuning in and checking these out. If this does happen to be the first time you are listening because of our guest, then please subscribe. Subscribe on iTunes. If you listen to it on SoundCloud, subscribe that way. Either way, keep coming back. I got a bunch of there's 19 other episodes right before this, and some of them are very connected to this particular episode because, namely, Angel and I were co-workers at the Knitting Factory music venue here in New York, the one that was in Lower Manhattan on Leonard Street that's long since closed. And if you have been listening to some of the episodes before, you know that I've talked to a couple other people from that family of employees, and hopefully we'll do many more of those to come, because I think it's definitely an important part of my life and a little tidbit in my career. So, and Angel worked there when I was working there. That's actually how I met her, and I don't think I even, going back to our conversation and all that, I don't even think I knew that she played music until, seeing her around for a little while and at work. So, yeah, we talked about her career. We said trajectory a couple of times. We talked about growing up in Sacramento, where she's from, and coming to New York, and then living in LA, and now she's back in upstate New York. And we covered a lot, and it was a very special, moving chat. And it wasn't like I wasn't really coming from a place of interviewing her necessarily because of her musical output, although that's primarily what we talk about. But I just, it felt like very informal, so we were able to get into a bunch of stuff as well as the artistic process. So I definitely hope that you dig this. If you're a fan of her, if you're simply a music fan of her or an old friend, I think there might be both listening, I'm hoping at least, then I think you're really going to enjoy this. And it was definitely a treat for me. So let's just go right into this conversation with me and Angel Deradoorian here on The House List on my special 20th episode, and many more to come. Check it out. When I met you, I didn't know that you even did music, because we were essentially just co-workers at the club together. So I wanted to see really first, just like, because I didn't really know at what point in time like you had even like come to New York at that point in time, because this was like 2007, I think 2007 or 8, because this was at the Knitting Factory in New York, and something I've found myself talking about a lot here on this podcast too. And I'm talking to, I talked already to a couple different people from the club. So I want to start first with like how you ended up there, and then how you really came to New York, like from there. Do you remember all that stuff so vividly?
Kind of remember. I moved to New York in 2006, but I thought I started working at the Knitting Factory in 2007. I'm not sure. I did a weird handful of terrible jobs in the food industry when I got here, all of which I either walked out on or got fired from.
Did you have friends here that were like, oh, just come to New York, like you should come and check it out?
Not particularly. I had been touring with some bands from the East Coast, in those bands. And any time I came here, I really loved being here, and I liked what was going on with the music here. So coming from Sacramento, a place where the scene was pretty chill, not a lot going on.
Yeah, it was
come out here.
Yeah, Sacramento at that time Hella was from Sacramento, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember because I lived in Humboldt from 2000 I think to 2005. So I kind of came out maybe sort of a similar time as you.
Yeah, the scene always fluctuated there, and one of the clubs that we all played at shut down and moved to another location, and it kind of changed the vibe for me there. But
what was that club?
It's called Capitol Garage.
Yeah, the Capitol Garage. Yes.
Yeah, and that's where there's a lot of cool shows there.
Yeah. But that doesn't exist at all anymore, right?
It does in a new space, but there's something really charming about the old space they had, and I only played there once, after it moved. But anyway, I was like a pizza delivery driver in Park Slope.
What? Really?
And it was just so shitty. It was so hard driving around Park Slope trying to deliver pizzas because there's nowhere to park.
You had your own car at that time too?
I did, yeah, because I drove out here from Sacramento with a Vox AC 120 amp or whatever they're called.
Hell yeah.
I was that was my only, if I need to sell this, and I did have to end up selling it, was my only thing of value, so I had to get it out there. But yeah, I think I got the job at Knitting Factory either through my best friend, Saird Egan.
Hell yeah. Shouts to Saird.
What's up, Saird? I think it was through Saird because we ended up kind of moving into this house together last minute through we both broke up with our boyfriends and we're we gotta get a place.
Right, that happens.
And then we became really close and started working together there. And so I think I worked the door at the old office mostly. And I started crocheting hats and scarves there, and then Sarah started doing it up at the box office, and then people would always be like, "You're knitting at the Knitting Factory?" And I was it's crocheting actually. So
hell yeah, it was quite a. So did she pulled you in, or did you guys just find that together because you were such a synonymous pair there at the club as far as the characters go, which was a place full of very different characters.
I don't remember how she got the job, but probably through a friend, and then I just came in for quick whatever. I don't even remember how it happened.
It's crazy too, because if you really just came to New York without knowing a ton of people, and then you fall into place, especially at a place like that too, it's you meet a lot of people really quickly. Yeah. And a lot of those Knitting Factory people, I still know a lot of them too. They're all still in New York for the most part too.
Yeah, I did know a few musicians here. My friend Sam Rosen was going over to Dave Longstreth's house a lot then, and Dave lived on Halsey with Ben Bromley, who was in Fisher Spooner, and Matthew Hauk from Phosphorescent, and then Ray Raposa from Castanets was living there. Cool. And it was just this crew of musicians, and I would go over there to jam with Sam because we the band I played in from the East Coast is from the town he grew up in, so I met him.
What was that?
This band called Tiger Saw, which is a kind of folk ish lo-fi band. I played drums in and
hell yeah,
and whatever instruments they needed. So that was kind of my way in. Was with Sam. I was at the house just playing music with him. I was playing with my friend Sebastian Kruger from Inlets, and just a bunch of bands. I was playing in this band Steel Train with Jack Antonoff, who was in that band Fun, or I don't know if they exist anymore.
Oh yeah, Fun. No, now it's something totally different.
He has a project called Bleachers.
Bleachers, that's what it is.
So that was also from like a past band experience from like same label, California. That's how we met. Anyway, so I was playing in all these bands, and I just remember like that's how I like met Dave and got into all the other stuff.
Right, which is like a whole huge chapter too in that. But going back just a little bit, I mean, were you playing there? If you came from Sacramento with an amp, then obviously you must have played music when you were there too, clearly, right?
Yeah. So
what were the bands there?
I was playing in a band called An Angle, which was on that label Drive Thru Records.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that label?
Mm-hmm.
And it was mostly like a pop punk label, and that's how I met Jack from Steel Train and like all these bands. We all did this tour together when I was like 17.
Whoa.
Or whatever, 18, and like one of the only girls on the tour, and like it was just really funny.
All like in a van together or something, or what was it?
We all traveled separately, but yeah, it was like a 4-band tour.
Wow.
So something crazy.
Classic.
Like yeah. So I played in that band for a couple years. I played in kind of more of a like angular indie band called Bridges with some of my friends, also from Sacramento.
So angular, like how close to like math rock is that?
It was like a mix of, it was like more technical playing, but melodic, and like the band that those guys came from and was really like math out or whatever.
Yeah, when I was in Humboldt, the math rock was like thriving at that time, like 2002, 3. Yeah, it's like seems like it's maybe due for a resurgence.
Pretty NorCal vibes.
Absolutely.
Definitely like played in Humboldt a bunch, but more with An
sweet.
Angle, and played these like house shows up in Humboldt. Loved going to Arcata.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, that was like really my first. Well, I'd lived in Portland from there, and I moved down from Portland, but the house shows in Arcata and Eureka were like definitely made like a huge impression, because I grew up in Virginia, and that was non-existent growing up. Like there was no bands, barely any bands, and none of them played like shows in basements or houses or in garages and stuff. It's very California, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. It was cool too, like going up there, because Sacramento is kind of isolated in a way, and then Arcata is like super isolated, but it's just like randomly placed in like Northern California by the beach, and there's just like trees and whatever, and you just show up and you're like, I'm in this weird little magical land all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And there's all this cool stuff going on, so those are always like good memories there.
There's such a good like connection to like once you're like above San Francisco or even east of it too, when it's like, Sacramento and Davis and Chico and Humboldt and stuff like that, or even like Santa Rosa or whatever, like there's like a connection there too amongst those people. At least at that time it felt like, I don't know what it's like now.
Yeah, it's all these little pockets, and you all meet up and everyone's intrigued by each other, but there always was a feeling of camaraderie, and like people really stoked if you came through and played a show, and really like hospitable people taking in the bands. And like I think we played a house show in Arcata, and there were literally 2 goats like in the house.
Ha, really?
The show.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I think so. Yeah, just weird shit like that. So those were really fun experiences, and just like it's such a trip because it's such a long time ago at this point. But just to think back on it, and how that was a really important thing to experience and travel around and meet people and to start playing music.
Was your brother playing music in Sacramento when you were growing up too, or?
Yeah, he played in a few bands. He played in some like hardcore bands, and
He was always drumming?
Always, yeah. And then he played in this band called Quitter for a while, which is more, I don't even know, like they really liked I don't know, like U2 and Mazzy Star, and
Oh wow, really?
They didn't like sound that much like U2. They were kind of like epic-ish music, but the songs were really well written, and then that just kind of dissolved, and I moved, and then he moved to New York City and joined a band out here, and like
Gay for Johnny Depp, which maybe wasn't the one he joined initially, but I love every time I see him, or it's been a while, it's been a couple of years since I've seen him, but when I would see him, especially at Matchless, when he worked at Matchless, I'd always pester him about that band because they were like such a weird like anomaly group too, because they were much more popular overseas than in New York, and they were a New York band, I think. And I know that they don't really exist anymore either, but he's an incredible drummer. So.
Yeah, he's awesome. I think he got into that band because he had gotten a like gig through Geffen Records, and like some of those guys had another band on that called Instruction. And they ended up touring like stadiums with Korn.
Whoa!
I don't know. He was doing that when he was 23, and I was like, "What is going on right now?" But then,
That's amazing.
He had to get out of Sacramento too, and like try something new. And I'm really glad he came to New York and just kind of found his own way with music and his own life out here.
Yeah, I mean, you guys and your sister too. I mean, you're all like very established, like playing and touring musicians. I mean, was that even something like growing up were you made to learn an instrument like when you were a kid, or was it encouraged at all? Or
yeah, definitely. I think at some point our parents asked us what instrument we'd like to learn, and they would get us lessons. We were really poor, but they had a family friend who kind of funded our music education. So we're really grateful for we call him Uncle Willie.
Nice.
And he paid for my piano lessons. My brother was taking drum lessons, and my sister actually moved into dancing more. So I learned that, and then I just taught myself instruments around the house because my dad's a musician. So we had a bunch of instruments.
What, did he play guitar or something, or what was his thing?
Oh, he's a saxophone man.
Oh, yeah?
Marty Deradoorian.
I met him once at the Knitting Factory. Was he playing like around when you were growing up? Like, did he?
Yeah.
Like in jazz bands or something, or what?
He was at that point doing more like blues stuff.
Oh, cool.
He grew up doing like R&B and jazz and some just like experimental stuff when he was at the Art Institute in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, he was gone through many like incarnations, but he really loves the blues. So that's
neat.
His main jam.
So your folks are like, you guys are from like California, at least your parents grew up in California too, or were they born in the States?
My mom grew up in Sacramento. My dad grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. And
interesting.
His dad was a refugee from the Armenian genocide. So that he's like the first generation. I don't know where his mom was born, but he grew up in this small Armenian community in Providence.
Oh, wow.
And then went to San Francisco to take fine arts classes. So he got a BA in like painting, actually.
Oh, wow.
So makes really beautiful paintings. So my mom's an artist too, and she makes really beautiful pieces right now.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah.
Yeah, so the family history of art is very much like interwoven together.
It is, and like they didn't really come from art families, so they kind of went rogue in a way, and like went and pursued these artistic dreams, and then that just stuck around with our family, and that was kind of like the core of our family in a way. We weren't very traditional in many ways.
Right. I think too, as like if you're first generation too, you have to sort of start from scratch, if you will, or like at a certain point where you just define your own like path because you're in a country and there's no, there's little context for anything before you that's in the United States. Like my parents came here in '69, and I mean, I know what my brother and I are doing is very different from how they grew up and what they did when they came to the States for, work and a career. So it's interesting to see how for your dad, who's first generation, how he like lands on his feet and his path, and how, as for his kids, like what the results, or I don't know if result is really like the right word, but your guys' path, because it's hyper creative stuff. I mean, because you just have the two siblings, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I mean,
I think, I mean, I've thought about what, people immigrating here and what that feels like for the people that are coming from other countries here to start a new life. And I think some people have had a lot of trauma from their past experience coming here to start a new life. And so some of those people kind of abandon aspects of their old life and their culture when they come to the United States. They're like, we're going to be American now. We're not going to speak this language anymore. So my dad, he learned Armenian, but because he was in the community, but I don't think it was like encouraged that much from his parents. And he's an only child. So he didn't really get to continue. If he had a sibling, maybe he could continue speaking the language with his sibling. But he, grew up American with foreign parents that didn't like instill deeply the Armenian traditions. And they were a lot older than him as well. So I think he just kind of, he did have to find his own way. He grew up in the projects. He had a really tough beginning, and I think music and art was definitely like a way for him to get through those tough years, and then that kind of set him off on his own path. So it's interesting to see how people kind of deal with their surroundings and with how their family operates and all these things. And for us, I feel like we could kind of take it to another level because we had that foundation instilled in us. It wasn't something we had to go find maybe the way my dad did or my mom. So I'm really glad I started learning at a young age how to do music, and I didn't think I was going to do it. But when I was 16, I made the decision to be a musician instead of a visual artist and start touring.
Yeah. Well, once you throw yourself out there and you really see what that experience of playing shows is like, and then especially when you start at a young age and as you're evolving as a person too, as well as simultaneously, when it's your first tour, of course it's going to be weird and a new experience and very different from your fourth or 10th or 20th tour where it's you become so much more ingrained into it and just prepared and knowledgeable and stuff. I mean, that journey is pretty unique too. If you start young and not you're born into it, you're a child of some touring artist or something like that, but you just kind of go out on your own because starting at 16 or even 17 anytime in your teenagers is pretty darn new to that, because I mean if you're playing, you're also limited to wherever you are allowed to get into as well. So,
my god.
did you have to sit outside of shows and stuff?
Yes, a lot. They'd be you can come in and play the show, and then you got to get out, and it'd be a cold night and just hanging out by myself in front of the club.
Yeah, then, that's whack.
So when I turned 21, which I celebrated my birthday at Zebulon, 21st birthday, and I was finally, thank God, I did my time. I did 5 years of this, and now I can just be in these places and be accepted.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier in New York, though, to stay in clubs. They were so much more mellow. California is really strict about that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Zebulon, that was cool. Yeah, you even had a residency there too, or something ages ago, right? Or you played when you started doing those first shows around that first record. it was like, I remember you were doing shows there too, right?
My very first Dirty Projector show was at Zebulon.
Oh,
It
yeah?
was just Dave, Amber, and myself singing, and Dave playing guitar. I didn't do a residency there, but I did play a few shows there.
Right.
And, like, that place became really, it was a really important place for a lot of us.
Yeah.
It didn't really sink in till they got booted out of that space, and so many great things happened there.
So with Dirty Projectors, that's how it started, really. You started playing before any kind of recording or anything like that, right? You just became part of like the live performance aspect of it, right?
Yeah, I think Dave wanted me to play some flute parts on Rise Above, but our friend Sam Hilmer ended up, I think, recording those. And Sam, he's an amazing wind instrument player and woodwind player. So I didn't, end up playing on Rise Above, but I was around when they were recording it, and then I learned all the material, and that's when I learned how to play bass. And
oh wow,
our first show was at Purchase,
at SUNY
Purchase, and I was just like so freaked. I think I was pretty freaked out because I'd like never played bass. Yeah, and I had to kind of use my guitar skills to learn bass, and then I had to learn all of this material in a really short period of time. So we were doing like crazy long practices. Dave and I alone, we would go get like coffee and a blueberry scone every day and like sit and learn all this material because I also had to sing everything.
Dang.
It was like boot camp.
Did you play the bass like a guitar initially? Like, how did you evolve into being able to play that?
I still do. Yeah, I very untraditionally play bass because I can't do like the 2-finger style picking.
Right.
I use like all 4 fingers to play, and I pick a little bit, but I also like to play chords on the bass. I really love the bass now. I wasn't stoked on that in the beginning, but it ended up being such a cool instrument to learn. It's like so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
So how did that, because that was even 2007 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So you're still like pretty new to New York and because any of your stuff that you were doing on your own, that was like non-existent at that point in time, right? Were you recording anything on your own or writing anything just for yourself?
Yeah, I was. I'd been writing and recording music since I was probably 18.
Oh, cool.
And when I got there, I was 20. But I didn't really want to release that music. I realized it was just not developed enough. I'm kind of a person who really needs to feel good about the material I'm releasing.
Sure.
And I changed so much after being in that band that I learned so many more like genres and heard so much more music that I was like, oh yeah, this was just kind of like practice to me, was writing these songs when I was like 18.
Oh, right. I mean, yeah, and Dave is like a extremely knowledgeable and extremely talented musician too. So just to be able to absorb, whatever he is going on, especially if you guys are literally like you're, working through picking up a new instrument, like as you start even working with someone, I would imagine like the education level is pretty high at that point in time, right?
For like of his?
Of you just like being able to, if you're sitting and trying to not only adapt to the bass, but learn new songs at the same time to play that instrument on. I mean, you got to be like, like really learning a lot, in the process, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think of like a really cool thing about being in that band was learning some like even deeper self-discipline. Yeah, and having to work through pretty difficult challenges with playing and singing and all these things. So it really kind of brought in this whole other level of how to approach learning how to play music and writing and so many other aspects of what it is to be a musician, and to really take your skill to the next level.
Right. But like, if you look back too, like because I hadn't listened to this record in a long time, but with Mind Raft, which is great to go back because there's a lot of memories like associated with that record too, of that period of time, and it's so different from whatever was being made and played in Dirty Projectors, obviously. Although I think he helped you, or he was a part of that or around for some of that stuff too, right?
Yeah, Dave engineered and produced
cool.
Mind Raft. So there were some songs that were like developed but not really sonically developed, and so like High Road, that song really changed a lot with Dave. I think like my only kind of qualm with that EP is that those songs are so damn long and they're so slow.
Yeah, but that's, in a way, I mean, that's perfect for what they are, since they're both slow and long. Like that, I guess, in a way, if you look at it, it just, I suppose it depends on your perspective on that kind of style of song too, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, looking back, that's how you view it, as something the songs were too long and slow.
I think the songs are cool, and like and I think a lot of people really connected with that more than anything I've released, actually, which is funny to me. I think like my natural energy musically is kind of that pace, but I like to challenge myself, so I try to change that a lot. And
yeah, there's something kind of like just unfettered or something, as if like you just kind of, it's not like in particular with that record where it's they exist in a certain form where I'm trying to articulate it in the right way. But another thing I sort of engaged with when I listened to it, because I listened to it yesterday and today, and it reminded me of this other group that I really love that I don't even think they exist anymore, but they were called Town and Country, and they were on Thrill Jockey. It was like a Chicago jazz. I think they were like kind of affiliated with Tortoise, and there was no vocals, but they were like really, really slow and repetitive. Like, not that those songs from Mind Raft were like that, but there was some, but there's a certain level of like, meditativeness, I guess, or whatever, where you can zone out, and there's a great quality in being able to do that, like where you can, put that shit on, and it takes a different form where you're inside the music in a different way than being like, with the new record, it's a lot more, it's more like you're really like engaged with it, because it's faster, it's more it's just a very different thing from like, and there's years has gone by since those two things, but that's just me trying to like articulate my thought about it. But but going back to that time too, because Dirty Projectors was an actual like, it was a very busy band in the midst of all that too, right? Yeah.
That's why I couldn't really focus on both things. I mean, Luckily, when making Mind Raft, I think Dave had just finished making Bit of Orca, and then we recorded Mind Raft in a few days, and so we all had stuff coming out in 2009.
Oh, you did Mind Raft in just a couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, they're really, we like tracked it in a few days, and then mixed it and while we were tracking it, and it's really minimal record, so it wasn't like super, and I also like the kind of rawness of that EP, just because we didn't try to tweak things to a degree to make it really refined sounding. I don't like that anyway. So that, and I mean, the reason why it took so long to release the next one is because I wasn't working on that record. I was in Dirty Projectors and just focusing on that. And we were starting to tour more, and
yeah, I mean, you were on the road for like 3+ years straight with them, right? Like, as far as just touring off that next album, right?
Yeah, we did at least 2 years of touring on just Rise Above, and then another 2 years doing Bidda, and all over the world, bigger shows, bus tours, everything was like getting bigger and bigger, so we had to really start refining our shows. And
how did that? Can you just talk about that just for a little bit, like that, from where it started to the point where it's like, you know, refining and bigger, and like that's a big step for a lot of bands too, you know, like
going from the Dodge Caravan tours,
right? Because when you got a bus, you have a lot more responsibilities as a band that way. You know, it's the finances and everything, and like the production and I mean, how many people were on stage with you too?
The biggest band version was the 6-piece when I was in it. But then we had, you know, our touring group, our crew, Matt and Dan, and going from, you know, being extremely uncomfortable in a tiny van, and like Brian had to lay down on me every day because he had back problems from drumming, to just like, you know, really grinding out there, to moving it onto the bus was I think we were pretty grateful, and we felt like we did our time for sure.
Right.
And you know, the quality of life had to go up if we really wanted to also sing like that. The singing was just so demanding, and I was losing my voice on a lot of those beginning tours because I didn't really know how to properly sing, and we were so exhausted. How
do you even train yourself like for that? Like after a while, how did you learn to like build that stamina up?
I had to take a couple vocal coaching lessons because I was just blasting out my vocal cords from like all the screaming stuff we were doing, and not using enough of like my core power to sing.
Right.
And then it was just like a lot of practicing, and just
core power being like up from your diaphragm,
your diaphragm, your pelvic bowl, your lateral muscles, like these parts that can like these muscles that can support your air.
Instead of
power.
all from like your like right in your throat,
right? And where, you know, like if you go to a bar for a night and you're just talking to people loudly, you'll have a hoarse voice the next day, and that's kind of like what the singing was like.
Right.
So that's what we had to learn how to take care of. And I lost some of my upper register because I just didn't. I was getting sick a lot, and I lost part of my upper register. It was really depressing, and then I just had to get better at understanding my voice, and you gotta rest so much when you sing like that.
But it's tough when you have like it's hard to find rest when you're on tour anyway. I mean, if you're doing, you know, show after show, I mean, I'm sure you got the occasional day off like every few days, or every like one day, like what is it, 4 days on, one day off or something? Or
that was a hard lesson learned. But I'm sure we were doing like many days in a row for a while.
Right.
And then at some point we were like, we got to do 3 days on, 1 day off. And luckily we were in a position where like that could be honored.
Right.
And that was really helpful, I would say.
Yeah, I would certainly think so. I could see how taxing that would be. I mean, so for you, like there was like just a period of time when like you were so in the middle of it, and then at what point where you obviously decided to go another direction too. So like, and I guess forgive my ignorance too, because I knew that it was really just that there wasn't another album after that you were on after Bid Orca, right?
Yes, that's right.
So what was that? Where did you go? What direction did you go from there?
That's when I had moved to Baltimore with Dave, my ex-boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I kind of started a whole different chapter of my life. So Dave was working on Centipede Hurts, and I started working on my The Expanding Flower Planet.
Oh, even at that point in time. Okay, so
yeah.
So you had been working on that for a couple of years?
I started writing music in 2011, but 2011 to 2012, I would say I wrote a few songs because I really had to like work out what I wanted the music to sound like.
Right.
So it was just like a good amount of shit that I wrote. that sometimes I'll listen back and I was like, what the hell is this?
Really?
But yeah.
What direction was that going in?
I was listening to so much like Ethio jazz, like Mahmoud Ahmed and like those Ethiopics records and Orchestra Polyrhythmo, the African Scream Contest compilation, like a lot of. I mean, and of course it makes sense coming out of Dirty Projectors, which borrowed a lot of the energy of that kind of music.
Right.
I was listening to a lot of that and like Terry Riley and Alice Coltrane, but I think like where I kind of landed with it was that I knew I wanted the record to be really rhythmically oriented, but I think I just like more sonic, like expansive sonic sound in some ways, right. And just having to and learning about my own singing voice and what that was going to develop into a little bit more, and knowing how much I love singing more Middle Eastern scales or in different modes. I don't really like singing a lot of major scales all the time.
Yeah, and I would think too, after like years of arduous touring and singing like in front of so many people on stage too, which is a very different style of performance than being controlled in a studio, obviously, that like where you're informed as a singer alone is probably has to be super intense. I mean, you've been doing this kind of really intense style of singing for an extended period of time, nightly, and then to try to pick up, not that Mindraft is like a reference point, but it is the thing that you had somehow you put out. So for the public, it's a reference point, at least, like I would think that there would be so much to, so many pieces to the puzzle to figure out what you would even decide to try to do after all that, after being, after the experience of Dirty Projectors, which at that time had made such a strong impact on people too, and music, and was so unique too, especially with that record. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just thinking out loud too, but yeah, that's a lot of stuff to process, right? Like,
definitely. And I mean, and also Dave Portner is a total audiophile, so a lot of him and he was showing me all kinds of stuff and listening to a lot more music with him. So yeah, it was like just so much musical intake, and I loved it. And
because you opened for them a little bit too, right?
Yeah, I did some tours with Animal Collective. They were really nice to let me tour with them at that period in time.
Yeah,
because I was probably not really ready for that.
Were you playing by yourself?
Yeah, and I still was so new to playing solo that I didn't really have things figured out on that level for a while. I would say till like 2014 is when I really.
So with that solo performance, like, what were you even playing on stage? Like, what were you using, a guitar or bass? Or was it all keys?
I was probably playing a little bit of bass and keys and like some backing tracks from a computer, but they were like early incarnations of Expanding Flower Planet. So some of those songs, and then some Mindraft stuff, and like some weird instrumental stuff that I wrote. Yeah, so that was kind of like the early development stages, doing those shows with Animal Collective at Merriweather Post Pavilion.
Oh my God, in front of like thousands.
Dear God.
Right.
Yeah, and just getting heckled by somebody in the front, and I'm like, dude,
really?
Yeah, I was like, if you were up here and you're like a 25-year-old girl, like, playing these songs in front of thousands of people that are diehard fans of Animal Collective, it's just like it was pretty surreal. I was incredibly nervous. I never felt nervous before playing shows like Dirty Projectors. We had it down. And
you're part of a unit there too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, by and large, any kind of opening act for a group that's playing amphitheaters and stuff, you're going to have to deal with a lot of shit from the audience is they're not there for you. They didn't spend $65 on a ticket to see the opening act, unless you're like super diehard fan of both, which usually isn't the case, you know. So yeah, it's totally unnerving, you know. Like
it was kind of rough, but at the same time, I mean, their fan base are really wonderful people. So a lot of them, there's a good amount of fans out of their group that support me musically now, and I really appreciate that.
Well, yeah, and you guys would do a record later together too.
Yes, the Slasher Flicks record.
Yeah. How are we doing on time?
I can just go pay my meter.
Okay. So then, like, at what point in time did you move back to California? Because you said you were living in Baltimore, so you went. I know you went to LA, right? You never went back to Sacramento, right?
No, didn't go back to Sacramento.
There's still time.
There's still plenty of time. I moved to LA in May of 2012. So
cool.
So I was in Baltimore for like a year and a half before going back west.
So what part of LA were you living in?
It's called Angelino Heights. It's near Echo Park.
Mm-hmm. And that was like your first time living there too, right? So it's like totally picking up in a new, like, whole new chapter of your life. Right?
Yeah, and having just done that in Baltimore and trying to establish some musical roots there, and then having to do it again in LA, it was quite a bit of adjusting. There's a lot of adjusting in that period of
like
time.
When you say musical roots, is it like just about establishing yourself within that community of musicians that are there?
Yeah, Baltimore I wasn't as fixated on that because I was writing music more, and I knew that my purpose there was to kind of just write.
Mm-hmm.
And I already had a group of friends that were easily like accessible to spend time with, like Matt Papich from Cola. He used to be in Ecstatic Sunshine. Him and I worked on music together there, and like, you know, Drew and Martin from Matt Mose. And
yeah, Baltimore has a pretty awesome history of musicians.
Yeah, and Dan Deacon.
Right.
So many.
Video Hippos, were they from Baltimore?
I think so. I
remember that was a show at the Knitting Factory that you had done.
Yeah.
With Health. It was like an early show.
Yeah, man. A lot of cool, like, I think Baltimore is great. I think there's a lot of great musicians there. Mm-hmm. And Lexi Mountain, like, there's the H&H building, floristry space where a lot of DIY shows happen, and Copycat, and like then the band, like Ponytail also.
Yeah, Ponytail. What was the venue that was closed down? Was it called the Bell Foundry? Or?
What's that?
What's the Baltimore space that just was like famous after the fire in Oakland? There was a show space, art space in Baltimore that was closed down. I'm pretty sure it's called the Bell Foundry, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't see that in the news.
Right.
And I hadn't talked to anybody about what happened after that fire. But so many DIY spaces there. Yeah. It could really affect Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's really only a couple of normal, quote unquote, music venues there.
Yeah. I think they do. Like, there's some shows going on at this place called The Crown now, and then there's a Metro Gallery.
Right. So how was it adjusting or like getting situated in LA? It's such a universe unto itself, you know, in many ways.
Yeah, it was pretty hard for me.
Was it?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think like moving during writing and trying to pick up again and be inspired again and like reset up a musical space to write in, it all took a lot of time to get into that world. And then I was like totally broke, so that
doesn't help.
I had to start my own business because people wouldn't hire me. Like, I'm just like the worst at interviews.
Hire you just for like a regular job?
Yeah, and they also know like I'm a musician. I'm like really bad at lying, so they'd be like, what do you want to do? And I'd be like, well, I'm a musician. So they're like, oh, you're going to bail in like 6 months and go on tour or whatever, which is true. So I just started a cleaning business with my friend Gazal. And
like house cleaning?
Yeah, and we just would clean. Well, we cleaned some buildings in downtown LA and like some people's houses, and then I also worked at a record store. So I had to do that while I was writing this more material, and then trying to integrate into this music scene, which is like really, really spread out in LA.
Right.
And people all have these really comfortable homes where they can work on their music and like live these comfortable lives. So trying to kind of get people together is harder to me in LA.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, yeah.
So it took me a while to find those people, and they're all there. There's like an amazing group of artists and musicians in Los Angeles. It's just like you hermit there in a way. Like you stay in, you create. And
Did you have a car?
No, Dave and I shared a car. So
even a car was, I mean, that's a tricky thing too, you know, with limited car. Did you fuck around with the train? Did you take the train?
Hell no.
No? Train's not that bad.
Because it wasn't even close to where I live. Like,
really?
The system is so limited there. It's like in the public transportation thing was just appalling coming from New York City.
Right.
You're like, this is ridiculous. But I do like taking the bus. So I do that.
So how was that? You could get around on the bus okay?
Yeah, I didn't take it a lot. I stayed at my house so much.
Right.
Or my friends would pick me up or whatever, but I think my main focus there was to just finish this material, and luckily I did find people there to help me finish that out. So the reason I was there, it came to fruition, and I got what I needed the most out of living in LA, which was to create this full-length album.
How did you set up your writing space? Like, how does it work for you? Because it's different, obviously, for everyone, and finding that headspace and like ability to create is challenging. I mean, I deal with that all the time. Sometimes, because I work from home, and like, you know, when you get into that hermit mode, sometimes it can be a source of great productivity for writing, or other times it can be a source of great distraction too.
Yeah, it's both.
Yeah.
I had a garage space under the house that I worked in, and it was comfortable, and I could like set everything up in there. Like, two funny things about that space were like the power situation in LA is really funny, and there's like kind of like a rogue Mexican radio station that like blasts their signal, so anywhere like you plug in speakers in LA, you're getting the radio.
Oh yeah.
And it's so funny, like you're just like making like a pretty song, and it's like a commercial just blasting through the right speaker. But I recorded some stuff that was cool to hear. And then like the bathroom was above my studio, so anytime someone was using the bathroom, like the toilet would flush and like the water would run through the pipe, like in my space, and I was like, God, that's so annoying. So there were like these funny little challenges.
That's almost like a New York thing right there.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And the house in Baltimore, like that I worked in, was out in the woods basically, so it was like quiet, and it was I was kind of like spoiled by the Baltimore experience, and then kind of getting like all the street noise, and there's tons of helicopters and all this stuff just working around in LA. Anyway, yeah, I just kind of stayed in there a lot. I tried to work as much as I could, so I'd work at least 4 hours a day, plus I was, having to work or try and socialize a little bit.
Right. So when you're writing, are you starting with music? Are you like, 4 hours a day is obviously, it's that's a commitment too. So it's like, are you sitting and literally writing on a piece of paper, or are you demoing shit out, like making sketches of songs, or how does it work? A routine? Yeah,
I think I started using a loop pedal, and that really helped me to get into kind of more like a jam zone.
Right.
I play. I don't do music through headphones too much, so I set up PAs and I set up all my instruments and then just play. And the loop pedals kind of allowed me to play for longer periods of time and develop like ideas here and there. But before that, I was just kind of like having to fuck around on one instrument at a time, or like start with a beat. Everything was really on that record was pretty like fragmented pieces that I put together. So it's like that record to me is really collagey, even though it might not seem that way completely. I write like the beat for the chorus, and then like write the bass line, and then do a vocal thing, and like just keep kind of putting it all together.
But did you then take it into a studio, or did you record everything there?
I demoed that entire record myself, and then a lot of those stems ended up on the final album, but I needed help finalizing and getting better sounds, and so that's when I asked Kenny Gilmore to help me out.
So who is that dude? What's the story with that guy?
So Kenny is in Ariel Pink's Haunted Graffiti.
Kenny, what instrument does he play? Is he keyboard?
Moves around a lot, but yeah, I think he was doing keyboards for a while.
He's mad cool. I like him.
He's the best.
Super talented.
My brother. I love him.
So what's the extent of? So he's taking the demos with you, and you guys are sitting and then just approaching them or something? Or?
Yeah. So there were some songs that needed more attention, and then some that just needed some finalizing and additional tracking. So Kenny just like brought his rig over to my house, and we kind of just fleshed out the rest of the material and re-recorded a lot of the vocals, and got Mike Lockwood to do some drumming that I had, because I demoed all the drums, but they're like either loops or just like shittily played drums because I'm not that good of a drummer. So that was kind of the main thing, was to get better drum takes and vocal takes, and then Kenny and I mixed the record with Sonny DePerry, this awesome engineer in LA who's done so many records.
How did that come about? Did you pick him, or did you guys were like, yeah, this is the dude we want to work with? I
wanted to work with Sonny. He had engineered the Slasher Flicks record.
Oh, cool.
So, and he mixed it, and we really loved working with him. He's like just so easygoing and like knowledgeable, and just taught us so much, and we got along with him so well. He's just like just a friend now, and I want to make so much more stuff with him and Kenny. So yeah, they came in at the right point. It was really, really great to go through all those processes on that level with two really knowledgeable people, because for years I've just been alone. Just working it all out in your own head, right? And so it was, and this is like my first full-length thing, so there's a lot of first-time experiences, like, getting to sit and mixing for 10 days and loving that process, and like having a really good time tracking with another person, and we're like reading each other's minds about like how we want to process this sound or like do this take, and I loved that collaborative experience, and it was really like it would have suffered without them, I think, to a certain degree. It would have been very different, and their energy put into that was very important.
Yeah. You can definitely see there's like the collaborative, even if it's not in the forefront, the having people like that with you in the process of mixing and mastering it and finishing it is so crucial, that it just, all it does is just embolden the stuff that you had already come up with too. I mean, and going back to Mindraft too, it's like at that time, like, did you think like, ultimately I want to like do a real regular formal album? This is just this thing that I'm going to knock out because I have this opportunity to do it right now, or I want to do this. Were you even thinking about doing an album at that point in time, or?
No.
It was just
not
like,
really.
You had so much other shit going on.
Yeah, I and again, like, just not, like, my standards for what I release are pretty high for myself. So writing stuff, but I won't really release something till I feel good about it. And Mindraft finally was like the first thing where I felt pretty good about that. And then I just was doing Dirty Projectors.
Did you feel like people were like asking you about it and putting pressure on you and be like, yo, man, you gotta like do an album. Like, what's up with the album?
No, that's not my destiny. People are not like that with me.
Right.
I don't know. I've been thinking about that. Everything I've done, I've had to, like, work my ass off doing, and I haven't been approached that much. So people really left me alone, and I gave myself my own deadlines, kind of. I mean, it was a long process. It was like self-discovery going into solo music.
Right.
A lot that I did not and could not anticipate. So, I think, like, there's some people, like fans, who are curious when I was going to release more material.
Right.
But I really put this on myself, and I wanted to eventually do this. So I knew, like, my time in Dirty Projectors was limited anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that like knowing that, like, so how did you anticipate that?
Like,
as far as like what you were going to do next, was it something where it's like, yeah, we just want you to be a part of this project for this period of time over the course of this record, or you made the conscious decision to be like, I'm gonna go do some other stuff now? Well,
we made it, like, Dave and I made the decision to see if I should continue into the next cycle, because, like, doing a cycle of Dirty Projectors lasts 3 years, like recording and touring and all that.
Which they seemingly now are right about to start that all over again.
I think so. So it was like, if I don't do this now, I'll have to wait 3 years, and I don't know if that is how I want to play out my musical future. So that's when we decided I should just go then.
So how long? So until what point with the new record, the latest record? Say the title.
Expanding Flower Planet.
Yeah. Did Anticon get involved?
They did around 2014. I had been shopping, that word, sending the record to labels and trying to get someone to put it out, and Anticon came into the picture in 2014, and then we had to start setting up all the press and artwork and getting the records made, and so it took a bit till 2015. But
was it totally done?
Yeah.
The music, so the stuff with Kenny and all that stuff was on your own.
Yeah.
Reconnaissance.
So they were really generous and worked with me for free until I could get a label and pay them for their work.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know if that needs.
No, that's fine. That's how it. Yeah, that's when you know you have, like, real, like, friends in music for stuff like that.
I mean, like, just their belief and support was, like, I felt so grateful. Man, that was a big thing for me. I felt really honored that people would do that for me.
I'm sure it was a mutual respect.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like, taking time and finding the right people and getting a really good vibe going between everyone to make the best version of that music that could be made. So, so Anticon came in, and we got all that worked out. And
how did it feel to go out? I mean, it's not like you ever did go out as, like, a solo artist. This is, like, your first, campaign, with like all that stuff, because obviously Mind Raffle, there wasn't like a tour and a big publicity push and all that type of shit. Like, how was that experience for you?
That was extremely challenging. It was like everything, I had to start owning everything, and I didn't have to do that for a while. Like,
it's all on you.
Yeah, so having to get on tours and then tour manage myself, and really starting almost in certain ways at square one again, because I am heading this entirely new project, and, well, not entirely new, but, path, and don't have that same kind of support. So tour managing myself, having to like buy a car, teach my sister all the music in rehearsals, just like manage myself, money, all the stuff that you have to get into in that industry.
It's not like you have a manager and stuff, right?
No, and then I was like, everything dropped out. Like I didn't have a manager, didn't have a booking agent, still don't. But so I was really being shown, in my perspective of it, what it's like to do everything alone, and it's hard.
Do you find was it empowering, or was it more like, you can only do all of that stuff on your own for so long? I mean, it's to absorb all of those responsibilities on top of writing and performing the music every night. I mean, that's a lot for one person or a couple people on stage.
Yeah. Empowering. It's good to be knowledgeable. I think, in industry like this, it's good to know what is going on. And
knowledge is key.
It takes a long time to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Especially if you're like a self-contained artist that manages and oversees all the stuff, because it takes a long time to just be comfortable in your own art and being able to write songs that are compelling, that can be released and people will buy and want to see. That's a huge accomplishment on its own. And then to do the nuts and bolts bullshit, all the tour managing and the advancing shows and settling and making sure your money's straight and W-9s and all that type of shit. It's that's a full-time job.
There was a good amount of fuck-ups in there. Just kind of like how to manage money correctly, or like, even though I thought I was doing a good job, like, we'll forget about this one thing, or like, and then just being like so stressed out about it because you're learning and going at the same time.
Right.
It was a pretty eye-opening experience, and it made me realize how, doing this and being a musician, it really fluctuates. For a lot of people, not everyone's going to be on like a straight line upward trajectory in their careers.
Not at all.
And you have to learn new lessons and new ways to survive in your industry. And also, if you don't want to compromise your vision, and don't want to do what other people want you to do, sometimes, like, you're gonna be on your own. And
you shut yourself off from certain things when you can't relinquish some of those responsibilities to other people. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but
I think that's all a perspective thing too, because it made me question like what kind of trajectory I wanted to do with my career, and I'm still questioning that, because the industry has changed so much, and what people want changes very quickly. And I have a part of me that really wants to kind of realize these deeper creative ideas and aspects of myself into music, which is gonna be myself.
What do you mean?
Does that make sense? Like, I think some of the stuff I make won't be appealing to like a larger mass at times.
Right.
But then trying to survive in that and not wanting to alienate people. I think like just music is for me is like a very personal experience that I want to share with other people, and however it comes out, it comes out. So it's just, I guess it's kind of hard to explain.
Well, I think an artist too can exist on a lot of different levels to different people too, and when you're solo too, I think inadvertently you become very much inside your own head too, because it's not like, hey, we're a 4-piece band, like we can all bounce ideas off each other. We have our roles of who makes which decision, and whether it's in the studio or business wise. So when you're on your own, I mean, there's, depending on who you are as a person, you could put a lot of pressure on yourself too. And and in this, I feel like in this kind of day and age too, we're so inundated with information, both about news and the world, but also with like music and pop culture, and it's just being like kind of shoved in our face every day, where it's like, it's almost hard not to see the next man or woman, like what they're doing, and you have to make a conscious effort not to be influenced by that or affected by it, I think. And so yeah, I mean, being able to claim that kind of personal ownership of your material, your art, and still be happy is, I mean, that's going to be like a constant, it's a lifelong journey, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. And it's
So what do you I mean, you said trajectory, so obviously you're engaged with that concept. So where do you, now that you live in New York now too, and I'd love to talk about that, how that, the difference between artistically where you were in LA as opposed to being back in New York. Now you're not in the city, you're upstate, right?
Right, yeah.
And these are, again, two different worlds, and this is, your record came out now, it was 2015 when it came out, yeah?
Yeah.
So, and, now every year so much, last year was crazy, and so many different things happened in music too. It's like, at what vantage point maybe do you see, like, where you're at right now, with all that? I know I'm asking like maybe multiple questions all at once, but
yeah,
I'm just trying to get a read of where you're at.
Yeah, right now, I mean, there's still a lot of questioning of like how to, and maybe I don't really need to think about it, but how to proceed. And I mean, I moved up to upstate so I could have a workspace to write more stuff, and it's like a really visceral kind of experience with music right now, because I'm like alone doing this, and I have this freedom right now to explore just working alone on a pretty deep level, and it's made me think about a lot of stuff. It makes me think about ego, identity, how to do something like this is a very ego-based kind of thing, but music is also such a healing thing for people. Like, kind of wondering where to fit into that, and how that affects how many people your music reaches if you're not wanting to always like self-promote or like be seen or whatever it is. I don't really know where I stand with that. So really I can just kind of keep making music. It just seems like there's certain standards that have to be met in order to keep surviving in this industry and be noticed. And I'm just thinking about how to shift that kind of perspective or approach.
Right. I think the key is, as long as you don't stop, as long as you continue to create, then you're satiating that personal need, which is like essential to being an artist. And then much like how you had before you had, like you were saying, even before Mind Raft, you had all these songs, and by the time you got into that, when the light was shed into that area, you're like, well, these songs no longer have any meaning to me, or enough where you would want to put them together and call it a project or whatever. And and I know that you've done. I mean, you've been. It's not that you've been inactive, if you will, which is an industry term for sure. Because while you've been there, I mean, you're still playing, like you're performing a lot, and doing a lot of like way out shit. I mean, I was at one of the Union Pool. You did a residency at Union Pool like in the summer, fall?
Last March of 2016.
Dang.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
But so that was a month where you did a show every week for a month, right?
Yes.
And that was some way out shit, And that's perfect, like in that time, because you're fleshing out stuff and you're bringing in artists that are doing really interesting, unique stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really good experience overall because I got to continue exploring and performing all these different kinds of music I make. I don't really stick to one thing. I'm easily bored with myself. I have in almost every show I play, I change everything.
Nice.
It's really, actually, I have to like kind of chill out on that sometimes because I'll just like go into just this one show and like, how am I going to make this one experience happen?
Yeah, that's when it becomes very self-oriented because it's you're the one person that's been to every single show that you've ever done. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the audience, sometimes they may be a little ill prepared if it's going to be a totally different experience every single time.
Yeah, but in a way, like I feel like early on I kind of set up it to be that way. Mm-hmm. I have enough like freedom still at this point in my solo career too, and hopefully it'll always be like that, where I can explore all these different avenues in music and bring them to people on the stage. And it's been very what's the word I'm looking for here, like whatever, I'm like totally...
Oh, you get there. What is it?
It's just
is it rewarding?
It's rewarding, but more than anything, it's just like expanding my experience of what it is to play and experience music, to play it and to feel it.
Playing an experience, so playing like it's more of like an experience in itself, that one moment in time, which is the performance.
Yeah, and I prefer to create an experience with the group that's there listening that is unique and to that one, maybe just that one night. I mean, I have played the same set many, many times when I go on tour in different cities, but like here in New York, I can set up these cool shows with great promoters and do some special kind of thing, and that's when I really feel like I get to grow in my awareness and like experience with music.
Do you think you could tour like that, where it's like you do a tour but it's a different thing every single night?
I think I'm getting to a point where I could do something like that. I don't know if I would want to.
Yeah. Would that even mean anything to like actually, because when you tour, then there's a connotation that comes with that too, and it's like, and how would it translate in each different town and city too, as everyone is very different too.
That would be a lot of work, I think.
Right.
I can't even think about that.
Sorry.
But yeah, like those shows at Union Pool were cool because I got to do like a drone show, electronic only music, like my songs that I write. I write a lot of different kinds of stuff, and they all bring these different feelings and creative expressions out, and then I can see how to integrate all those things back into each other. It's like, I don't know, like the multifacets of like a bigger picture.
Are you listening to music now too?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of music right now.
How has that experience changed, like, for you? Like, you've obviously, you've been associated with a lot of great, talented artists. You've been exposed and traveled all over the world. So it's like now you have this rich palette of like context too. So like, how does that inform you now? Because you still like, have a long journey in front of you too.
I've been really into just like going on YouTube and finding weird, rare records that people upload. Right. I'm also good friends with Edon, this rapper he lives in Brooklyn. Well,
he's has a bottomless pit of knowledge too when it comes to records and his knowledge of psychedelic stuff all over the world too is crazy.
It's insane. He has like over 10,000 records. He's an amazing DJ. He has totally opened up my world for me. I feel very, very lucky to be around these knowledgeable musical people who like are preserving almost and like archiving all of this amazing music from over the years, and I get to listen to that, and it makes me want to explore more stuff, and it's great. It's really, really awesome, and I love listening to music. I listen to a lot of jazz right now.
Yeah, nice. What kind? Like what kind are you going? Are you way out? You're on the out. Out levels.
I don't know if what I listen to is on the out levels. I mean, like Pharoah Sanders,
that's getting there.
Alice Forever. I've been listening to Albert Eiler.
Cool.
Recently.
Alice Coltrane always like really pulls me into a very cold, if not fearful, kind of place. I feel like, but then again, I haven't. My point of reference for her is not like I have every album that she's done, and I did go to John Coltrane's grave for my birthday a couple years ago, which was a great experience here in New York.
I think like why I like that kind of group of musicians, like also like Don Cherry or
nice,
and John Coltrane or like Ornette. They all were on this deep spiritual path and realizing their music and spirituality at the same time, which is something that I think is really important in music and something that really calls to me. And I can see in a way why Alice could make people feel kind of afraid, because those spaces are so that they're exploring are unknown spaces.
Right.
They are the void, and they're bringing things back from that place. Like Sun Ra, are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, of course.
Like, oh my God, that just like so much material, just amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, how prolific could he be? I mean, and yeah, I think you make a really good point too with Alice Coltrane and a lot of those artists those jazz artists of that period of time, and spiritual jazz in general, where in contemporary music we have fewer and fewer examples of that because for whatever myriad of reasons, technology I think has absorbed up a lot of chances for people to get spiritual like that as far as musicians, I feel like.
Yeah.
But you're obviously you're trying to push into that world a little bit further, right?
I mean, I have to. Like, that's what it feels like to me now. So it's not, music isn't going to mean anything to me until I have my spiritual part of it integrated. Because why else are you making your art? Like, art is the other worlds. Art is to bring you into a higher consciousness. I know, like, these words are whatever new agey words.
No, not necessarily. No.
We don't have a wide vocabulary to talk about this kind of stuff.
That's
I feel
true.
Like in the Western world, because this world, the Western world, kind of denounced spirituality or these like alternative alternative, whatever kinds of
even that word too. I mean,
ways of dealing with life,
right.
Because life is hard, and a lot of people who create are the most sensitive people in the world, and they're the ones that have to heal and cope, and they bring that to other people to join them.
It's an offering like that, right?
Yeah, like living a completely practical life where you're rooted in physical reality is not enough for people. Like there's a much bigger unknown purpose of being here, and that is why I'm so grateful for artists like Alice and John and Pharaoh, Sun Ra, like all of these people that were transcending their identities. Like, in my opinion, it was just pure music. And I mean, they were coming out of it's always been a difficult time.
Absolutely.
For Black Americans, Black musicians, in the face of American just fucking racism, civil rights movement, and they unlocked to me this world of just the highest form of making music and spiritual alchemy or whatever. It's just I really appreciate that, and I guess the farther I get into music, I know it's fun, and it's fun to play, and it's fun to communicate with other musicians on stage, but there's also something that feels really important to me to share that feeling with other people.
Yeah, and I mean, it obviously means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It's not fun for everybody, too, and I think that the fact that you can be conscious of it in the moment, that it can exist as both a fun thing, which in that regard it can be very healing, but also that there is a pathway into it being a lot more spiritual or nebulous too, where you don't really know what it is, and that not knowing is really accessing a part of you that's like that could lead to so much more too. Like, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're a person who questions your existence and why you're here, I do that so intensely, and I feel like sometimes I can get a little bit closer or have a deeper relationship with what I'm looking for through creating.
You did. Yeah. What about ayahuasca? You did that?
Oh yeah.
How was that? Because then that's taking that theory and it's expanding that in a whole different kind of realm.
My experiences with ayahuasca have not been like the most enlightening, personally, forms of psychedelic medicine. You can feel very physically ill too. The way I've metabolized it in the past has been really, I don't absorb it very easily. So I haven't had like super, super deep experiences with it yet. Still kind of like learning how to take that medicine. But I'm taking a break right now.
Yeah, that's okay.
But yeah, also going into those worlds and just like, I don't know why I want to learn more while I'm here on Earth. It's a really freaky path, honestly. Like, I asked to see more, and I think that's why people do psychedelics, because we're not the same like how we were in the past. We're not connected the same way, and people are looking for connections, deeper connections in life, and it'll show you all the good stuff and it'll show you all the bad stuff, and you got to be ready, and you got to be strong if you want to see those kinds of things. So I appreciate having seen a lot of those things, but it's also a lot to process, and it's a lot to put out back out into the world, and be careful about how you you treat that information and how you transmit that information to others.
Yeah, everyone, isn't ready to be open on so many levels, or even, and so many people are not even adapt to thinking on those terms too, whether it's music or not.
No. That's why I feel like if you're a musician and you do feel like you have a spiritual inclination, or that's an important part of your music in the Western world, that you should refine that relationship with your music, because it's very lacking here, and especially in mainstream music right now, it's barely existing. And
I know, it's crazy,
and it's really, really hard for me to listen to a lot of mainstream music, because I feel like my soul is emptying out. Unfortunately, like really unfortunately.
Well, I mean, it's the one freedom I think we all have, is that you can choose to engage with that music or not, and even though it's just, there's a conveyor belt of it coming at us all day long, every day, but my perspective is different from yours. I'm not a touring musician, and I'm not one that's you're working out stuff as a musician that I think is both really doing it in a really unique way, but it's also quite brave too, because you are trying to figure out what direction you're going in too, right?
Definitely. And I mean, like, going back to the ego stuff, or like why you create in the first place, of course there's like self-discovery and self-development and self-awareness, self-respect, self-love, everything. Like, it's like doing martial arts, it's like meditating, it's all like, you have, if you need to self-realize in order to serve the world. And like, I can't really, and I'm still in that process in making music, and I might be in it forever, but I think that's kind of where my approach to this is: how am I going to serve other people? How am I going to do that effectively if I don't know myself? And that's kind of the only way it makes sense for me to create at this point. And I don't feel that coming from a lot of mainstream music. It's just like quick fix. It's like taking drugs and partying for a night and having this amazing moment that lasts. That's very fleeting. I'm not here to do that. I don't know, man.
I think you're doing great. I think you're getting there, and you're just, your journey is still so new, and I think you have a certain luxury in that you started at the age that you started, so you can, and the world was in a certain place when you started playing in front of people, and you started realizing your own talents as a musician as they were changing and evolving, and you're still in the place where it's like there's many miles yet to be traveled too. So that's a great luxury. You're not 85 years old, and not that the age barometer really means that much, but it does mean that you have many pages to fill too, I feel like,
Yeah, I mean, but age is a factor in the music industry, and especially as a woman. Like, that kind of stuff comes into play, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with that. But when you're trying to reach a certain spiritual place, I think the age thing starts to dissipate further and further away. Like,
man, I'm really like trying to figure that out right now, and like questioning what that is and what that feels like, because a lot of people are very programmed by the social standards of our culture. So to really try and break out of that kind of stuff, like, I live alone. I have to go live alone to, like, break out of that programming. And I'm still really programmed. I still am a woman in the world. And I feel certain pressures that I don't think men feel as much. And
no, not at all.
And one of them is aging. And one of them is, like, how you present yourself and how much your physical self is an asset as a female artist, or, like, is made to be an asset. And it, like, that sucks to me. It's like, I guess that's kind of a lot to talk about. But,
no, I mean, it doesn't have to be. I'm happy to talk about it. I do think it's something that isn't talked about enough. That's for sure, as far as in the context of music and pop culture and music culture and stuff, and that it's not something that maybe male musicians or male music fans recognize, because it's just not. It's not. It's I mean, Jesus in the in the temperature of our country right now, it's not like that agenda is being emphasized in any degree, like, in as far as, like, on some grand scale. In fact, it feels like we're living in a really very regressive state right now too. So these kind of conversations are more important than ever, I think, in exploring that stuff, because you have to think too, and not to go too long on this too, because you've been so generous with your time as well, is that, there's a certain mindset I think that we're in when we're in the present time, and given that we're living in such dramatic times as we are, we're dealing with this stuff so much on a minute-to-minute basis. But you got to think, like, 10, 20, 30 years from now, the same way that you're, like, engaging with Alice Coltrane and some of this, and Sun Ra, but really Alice Coltrane is a great example as and I know that there's many others, but as a woman that spiritually, music that was in the pop landscape, for what it's worth, that her legacy is still reverberating, like, to this day, with people that choose to pick up on it, which yourself included, and I know many other people too. But so you have to think too, where your legacy, if you want to choose to use that word, where that might be with the stuff that you're thinking about and doing right now, and how that will affect. We have no idea what it's going to be like, 20 years from now. But I think, you're still making, pieces of art that will be and can be referenced much later too. I mean, that's maybe pretty broad to just shoot that out there, but I do think, the fact that you're going, that you're thinking about that stuff too is very important.
Yeah, it's funny, like, why we record music, because to record music is to let it live beyond you, and it's something I think about, and, like, what I guess want to leave behind me. But I also don't always like to inject ego so deeply into music. It's kind of hard not to, but
well, it's kind of a necessary. It's like baking bread, like, you need to have the fucking, well, obviously yeast. I'm thinking of another. I'm totally butchering this analogy, but it's a necessary ingredient to it. I mean, even if it's just a pinch of it, because that might be what gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you into that writing room and creates that discipline too.
that is everything. Yeah. That is what motivates you.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I mean, there's healthy, like we have to live with an ego in this day and age, and it is our motivation and it's our desire, and our desire, or at least mine, is to make this music, and that's an ego-driven thing. So I think when I say, like, I don't want to inject a lot of the ego into it, is like, I think once I'm dead and this music is still going, what part of it maybe comes with me and stays here? I don't know how to explain this very well, but It's like, I'm just a body. Like, the consciousness part of me is not my identity and is not my ego. It's like a greater part of the ocean of consciousness. So that's kind of why, like,
well, I think the listener and whoever chooses to pick up on it then can embody, whether it's music, and let it drape over you whenever you choose to, like how you would listen to an old record in that moment in time, and then that could then affect whatever you're doing, whether it be tomorrow or many years from now. I mean, you'll take all of that with you wherever it may be that you end up going, or where any of us go. But I do think that you create something that exists, and people can then put it on like a jacket, and it may fit perfectly, and for some they might have to break it in a little bit, and it could have, like, you and I both listen to Alice Coltrane very differently probably, or it affects us in different levels. So that's the beautiful thing about it, is that at least if you engage with it, it's making you think or feel something, whether it's intrigue or fear or inspiration, or enlightenment or something like that.
Yeah, totally. And like, the way I listen to her is so, like, I'm just like, thank God she recorded her music,
Yeah.
Like, for me, it is very, I like need it. It's like nourishment. It's like food. And I don't always identify, I guess, like, the music with her identity. It's about what she's just, like, just watching her perform on a video, and she's, like, totally connected. She's totally in this other world, bringing this music, and it's like, that's what she came here to do. And she stopped playing music for like 25 years too. She went and became a disciple in India and became a deeply spiritual person and guru, and started an ashram, and then started performing again. So her path was, like, unbelievable, and how much she was able to give. But anyhow.
Well, you're on a journey. I think it's awesome. I mean, I've always admired you since we met at the club too. And I think you still have a great journey in front of you. And
yeah,
I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
No problem.
What an amazing conversation. An incredible artist and friend whose journey will continue on and on. If you haven't checked out her 2 solo records that she did, The Expanding Flower Planet, it came out last summer, or summer of 2015, I'm sorry, on Anticon Records. You can go to anticon.com to purchase that. I know that they got copies because I just looked. So they got the wax, CD, and tape, but definitely get that. And if anything, go get Finds at Mindraft, because there's something about that record too that is extremely interesting and unique, and just like a raw, totally different soundscape. And I think those 2 projects, outside of her output with other artists, just capture a certain period of time for her. And I hope that there's many more records that come, because I have a feeling each one will evolve quite a bit, as this is like, we captured this sort of artist in a state of evolution. I think, at least I thought in the moment, in the midst of that conversation, it certainly felt like it. I thought it was really amazing and cool. Not enough people put that much thought into their art. I think, and now I'm sure there are plenty, but in the moment, then they're talking about it. It felt very real and present, and it was just great to talk to my old friend Angel. It was a fun time, and I appreciate you guys listening to this one and listening to The Houseless. Keep coming back, please. This is my little project that is going to keep growing and evolving in its own right. This was the 20th episode, and there's many more to come. If you liked this, enjoyed it, please subscribe on iTunes. Copy and paste the link and send it to a friend. Just tell somebody. Be like, yo, check this out. Hey, it's Peter Agostin, man, from the Knitting Factory. I mean, I doubt anyone's going to know that reference at this point in time. But there might be some, especially if you worked there while I was there and while Angel was there. Then hopefully you guys appreciated this conversation as well. What else? Yeah, just keep tuning in. I don't want to berate you with too much more information. I think I'm going to play a song after this. The way that I do these, as I say at the end of every episode, this has been edited and engineered by my man CJ Stewart out in California. Not sure exactly where he is right now, but he's in Humboldt somewhere. And oftentimes now in the new year, we've been taking a little snippet of a song or something from from our guests of that particular episode. So we'll see. I'm going to try to play a joint real quick from Angel's catalog. So enjoy that. Thank you guys for tuning in. I want to say thanks to Angel too for her time. And I will catch you guys very soon here on The House List. All right.
comes to shore.